We can't be complacent. The fate of Ukraine hangs in the balance. But let's be clear, if Putin succeeds, there will be untold further misery across Europe and terrible consequences across the globe. We would never feel safe again. So we must be prepared for the long haul. We've got to double down on our support for Ukraine, and we must follow through on the unity that we've shown in the crisis. We must reboot, recast and remodel our approach. My vision is a world where free nations are assertive and in the ascendant, where freedom and democracy are strengthened through a network of economic and security partnerships, where aggressors are contained and forced to take a better path. This is the long-term prize, a new era of peace, security and prosperity. Britain has always stood up to bullies. We've always been risk-takers, so we are prepared to be bold, using our strength in security and diplomacy, our economic heft and our will and agility to lead the way. We're already stepping up in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine is our war. It's everyone's war, because Ukraine's victory is a strategic imperative for all of us. Heavy weapons, tanks, aeroplanes, digging deep in our inventories, ramping up production. We need to do all of this. Our sanctions have already seen Russia facing its first external debt default for a century, and we need to go further. There must be nowhere for Putin to fund this appalling war, and that means cutting off oil and gas imports once and for all. At the same time, we need to deliver support for the Ukrainian people. It means helping refugees, it means delivering food, medicine, other essentials, and it means keeping the economy afloat. It also means holding the Putin regime to account for the appalling crimes that have been committed. And when the guns finally fall silent in Ukraine, it means making sure Kyiv has the resources it needs to maintain security, deter further attacks and rebuild. That's why we're working on a joint commission with Poland to ensure Ukraine is equipped with NATO standard weapons. And it's why we're determined to work with the US, with the EU and other allies on a new Marshall Plan for the country. Ukraine deserves nothing less than a landmark international effort to rebuild their towns and cities, regenerate their industries and secure their freedom for the long term. We're doubling down. We will keep going further and faster to push Russia out of the whole of Ukraine. Firstly, we need to strengthen our collective defence. In the words of President Zelensky, freedom must be better armed than tyranny. Ahead of the NATO summit in Madrid, we need to lift our sights. We have long argued that NATO needs to be flexible, agile and integrated. The eastern flank must be strengthened, and we must support crucial states like Poland. That's why we're increasing our troop presence and we're deepening our defence cooperation. We also have to learn the lessons of Ukraine. The United Kingdom sent weapons and trained Ukrainian troops long before the war started. But the world should have done more to deter the invasion, and we will never make that same mistake again. Some argue that we shouldn't provide heavy weapons for fear of provoking something worse. But my view is that inaction would be the greatest provocation. This is a time for courage, not for caution. And we must ensure that alongside Ukraine, the Western Balkans and countries like Moldova and Georgia have the resilience and the capabilities to maintain their sovereignty and freedom. NATO's open door policy is sacrosanct. If Finland and Sweden choose to join in response to Russia's aggression, we must integrate them as soon as possible. And we reject the false choice between stronger traditional defence and modern capabilities. We need to defend ourselves against attacks in space and cyberspace, as well as by land, air and sea. We also reject the false choice between Euro-Atlantic security and Indo-Pacific security. In the modern world, we need both. We need a global NATO. By that, I don't mean extending the membership to those from other regions. I mean that NATO must have a global outlook, ready to tackle global threats. We need to preempt threats in the Indo-Pacific, working with our allies like Japan and Australia to ensure the Pacific is protected. And we must ensure that democracies like Taiwan are able to defend themselves. By talking about the rise of China as inevitable, we are doing China's work for it. In fact, their rise isn't inevitable. They will not continue to rise if they don't play by the rules. China needs trade with the G7. We represent half of the global economy. And we have choices. We've shown with Russia the kind of choices we're prepared to make when international rules are violated. And we've shown that we're prepared to prioritise security and respect for sovereignty over short-term economic gain, not least because we know that the cost of not acting is higher.